Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. My name is George Binns, and I'm here with my co-host, Gail Burke, and we have as our guest this evening Richard Baker, who is a candidate for the Governor's Council. But before we get into that, I guess the issue right now is coming up the 30th of April, which is next Saturday, is it?
Yep.
Yep, next Saturday. There's going to be a Republican caucus in Wakefield. And I guess the first question is, I thought we already had all these primaries, and we've decided that on the Republican side, Trump got all the candidate votes. So what's the caucus going to do?
Well, this is a procedure that's been around for as long as I've known, where we run caucuses in addition to the in addition to the primary. The primary decides who is going to get how many delegates, and I believe Trump got 17 delegates. Kasich got no, I've got the wrong numbers here, but
Trump cleaned up and
well, he didn't fully. He got like 27. Kasich got 8. Rubio got 8, and Cruz got 4 out of Massachusetts. But these are the delegates. We now need to select who the delegates are that are going to the convention. We've got an allocation, but we don't have actual people.
Oh, okay.
I guess the first question then is, since some people have dropped out, what happens to those delegates or those allocations for a delegate?
Well, it depends, because while Rubio didn't drop out, he suspended his campaign. And the reason he suspended his campaign is he wants to hold on to his delegates.
Oh, okay.
And presumably use them as bargaining chips, which he might be able to do on the first. I don't even think he can on the first delegate. He can use it to negotiate. And,
on the second ballot, isn't it?
After the first ballot at the National Convention, then the delegates are free.
Mm-hmm.
So when we elect the delegates on next Saturday, those delegates go down there and they have to vote on the first ballot for who they're allocated to.
Don't they have to sign an affidavit that they will vote for that person?
I'm not sure. I think whether they sign an affidavit or if they're just legally bound that their vote is going to go to Trump or Kasich or Rubio.
Well, I know in 2012 there was a problem with a young boy from, I think he was from Wakefield, and he refused to sign it. And they didn't want to accept him. And I don't know what the final outcome was, but I know that he was saying that he was cheated, and there was a big hoo-ha about the whole thing.
Right.
So I don't know if they changed it and forced people to sign an affidavit, or how would you know? Even
in 2012, and I was there for the caucus, and I watched everything that happened. That in itself was a whole interesting process, because everybody ignored the caucuses in 2012. Romney had won the state overwhelmingly, got all of the delegates, and the caucuses they thought were pro forma. Well, the Ron Paul people went and sent what they called the Liberty Caucus in there. And they sent in a couple hundred people and went and put their own slate of delegates up. And most of those delegates got elected, which was an embarrassment to Romney, because even though he won his state, and all of the Liberty Caucus was bound to vote for Romney on the first ballot. Romney clearly won the National Convention on the first ballot, so it was, no big deal. But all of these Liberty Caucus members were down there. They voted on the platform, they voted on the rules, and if anything had happened to Romney, they were there to vote Ron Paul. And this happened in a number of states, but Massachusetts was the most predominant one because they kind of stole Romney's state from him. So this year things are very different. And I'm going to give the Mass GOP a lot of credit that they have sent out emails, there have been flyers, there have been phone calls. They've done a lot of work to get people to come to the caucus. And because Massachusetts is really in play this year, that we don't know who the nominee is at this point. April, this hasn't happened since, I think, the Reagan-Ford election back in '76, that it's been this late that we don't know who our nominee is. Then it's important who's going to vote on the first ballot and the second ballot, and the campaigns are out trying to get people to get their people to the caucus.
Well, the candidates are still, like, I know Ted Cruz is still trying to convince delegates to vote for him in different states.
Yes.
Is that, I mean, I don't know what they do. From what I understand, and Trump is doing the same thing, they can take them to dinner, they can take them on his plane, they can do everything, which is perfectly legal.
Yes.
But it seems more like a bribe to get the delegates to vote for them.
There's and I'm assuming once you get to the convention, there'll be a lot of lobbying.
Yes,
and
yes, that's
trying
a
to
good
get
word,
people.
lobbying.
And it all depends on whether Trump gets the 1235 votes that he needs, or if he's even if he's fairly close to it. There's, I believe, 200. What I kind of like the superdelegates on the Democratic side, where unallocated delegates for various states for various reasons that I'm sure Trump will be working very hard to get if he gets 1190 votes or something, to get those, to get him over into the 1235 so he wins the first ballot. If he wins the first ballot, all the drama goes away. If he doesn't win the first ballot, there's going to be a lot going on.
Yeah.
And Ted Cruz is counting on that and really working to pick up a lot of votes after the, in the second and third ballots. And that's what Rubio's trying to do, is he's got this block of delegates. He's hoping that that they'll be his people that he can influence and get them to vote the way he wants them to vote. So he's got a bargaining chip. So maybe he picks up Secretary of State or a vice president slot or something like that.
We'll get back to the Republican caucus that you're having next
Yes.
weekend. So you're going to pick a bunch of delegates who are labeled with the appropriate candidate,
Yes.
depending upon how the primary went.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you pick these candidates, say you're going to pick somebody who's going to vote for Trump. Okay. He's limited on the first ballot. That's all he can do. Come the second ballot, he, she are free to pick whatever candidate they like.
Correct.
So in this process of picking candidates, are you trying to pick somebody who says, I'm going to vote for Trump every ballot, no matter how many? Or are you going to, is somebody in there saying, look, I know you got to vote on Trump the first one, but the second ballot, you're my man? How does that detail get worked out?
And what do they do when they go to the caucus? Are they sort of running their own little campaign to become a delegate?
Yes.
Okay.
So right now, there may be some people that have told the Mass GOP they want to be a candidate, but anybody can show up at the caucus.
Any Republican.
Yes, thank you. That's a point that
That we ran into, yeah.
Yes, I keep forgetting that unenrolleds cannot vote in the caucus. It's one of the few times that they can't. But any Republican can go and decide they want to be a delegate. When you get to the caucus, you just have to tell, and I think it's going to be Brad Jones who's leading the caucus for our congressional district. We're in the 6th congressional district. And you declare yourself that you want to be a delegate. when the caucus opens, they ask for nominations, and anyone can stand up and nominate someone. My wife, Lisa Mengo, plans to run as a delegate. So I plan to stand up there and nominate her, and I've got some friends that will second her nomination, and they'll collect all of the people that want to run for that particular delegate slot.
So you're going to have to nominate her for a particular voting slot, not
As I
a
read,
Trump or a Kasich or...
as I read the rules, and the last two haven't run this way, so this is new. Let me step back for a second. For our caucus, for the 6th congressional district, we have 2 Trump delegates and 1 Rubio delegate. That's and then we're going to do 2 Trump alternates and 1 Rubio alternate. So as I understand it, they're going to start off looking for delegates for the Trump delegates, and these would be people that are bound on the first ballot to vote for Trump. So people will get up, asked to be voted for, and we'll go through the nomination, the speeches, and then there'll be a vote. And those 2 will be chosen. Then they'll go to the Rubio delegate, and as I understand the rules, and I may be wrong about this, it's on the massgop.com.
.gov.
It is a .com, massgop.com's website, that what the rules are. But then they'll do the Rubio delegate, and I think the Trump people, if they lost running for the Trump slot, can then run for the Rubio slot. So
How does anybody keep it all straight?
it's going to be interesting. And Brad Jones, the minority leader in the House, is going to be running our caucus. So he's got the organizational skills to keep it straight. And then we'll vote for the Rubio delegate, and then do the alternates. So that's how we will do the selection.
So
Did I
you're going to
answer
end
your
up
question?
with...
I started wandering around. I hope I didn't get
Well,
off subject.
I'm still back to the issue, I guess, of suppose your wife and one other gentleman get elected as the Trump delegate, the prime Trump delegate. In their process of being elected, do they get up and give a speech and say, I'm going to vote for Trump, come hell or high water, for 40 ballots if necessary? Or do they say, well, I'll go along with it for 2 ballots? Or do they in some way commit to being a Trump voter for a certain number of ballots?
I bet you'll see candidates doing both.
Or do they have a choice, or is there some pressure put on them by the state committee to vote a certain way after the first ballot?
The state committee, and talking to them, for my candidacy as governor council, they have stayed completely out of this. Oh. And they're doing a wonderful job of being neutral in this. And I was actually surprised how little they knew about how the campaigns were running. So I was telling them how some of what they were using for IT platforms and stuff like that, which is a good thing, because that tells me that they're staying neutral and trying to make this a fair process. And so the delegate selection, I'm expecting the same, that they're not going to pressure people one way or another, other than to make sure they understand that they're voting, if they're a Trump delegate, they're voting for Trump on that first ballot.
And after that, all bets are off.
All bets are off.
Okay.
Now, a few weeks ago, we had a candidate for Democrat State Committee. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she, and then they had the Republican State Committee as well. Mm-hmm. Those people don't have anything to do with the caucus. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Well, so far they don't.
Directly, they have nothing to
Okay.
do with the caucus.
Okay.
Now, in the background, they're setting the rules. The how the caucuses are run was set by the Mass State Committee. The fact that we have caucuses comes out of the Mass State Committee. And this was part of the whole controversy between the two different groups in that election of the state committee people, was that there was half of the committee that wanted to run this caucus process the way it's currently run, and the other half wanted the state committee to select the delegates. So it's a matter, do the people select them? And every state is different.
Yeah.
And the states changed them. And, as we heard, the big controversy in Colorado,
yeah.
was that they had primaries in 2012, and the state committee decided recently to just go with a caucus.
Yeah.
So
So this is a big difference, too, between Colorado and some of the other states where the candidates' number of delegates has already been decided in a primary, and the caucus is just to pick the people who raise their hand and say, I'm voting for, as opposed to some places where they caucus and determine the number of candidates, the number of ballots, or I'm sorry, the number of candidates that they get, or the number of delegates they get for their so-called primary. So the caucus and the primary are the same thing.
right. There's some states that the candidates themselves choose their delegates. There's other states where the delegates' names are on the primary ballot and you vote for a delegate and they say which ones they're pledged. Every state does this different. And, because it's so close this year, all of us political junkies are getting an inside view of what's going on in each state and how each of these are selected and why it makes a difference.
And all of a sudden, that's what it comes down to. It does make a difference what's
Yeah.
going on, as opposed to, all right, all in favor say aye, we'll all go home
Have
after
a
the
big
first
party,
ballot.
yeah.
Well, what did I hear about, and I think they were talking about delegates that were on a ballot in one state, I don't even know what state it was, but there was no designation whether they were Republicans or Democrats. So people didn't know.
Well, for the primaries and for the caucuses, they would all have to be all Republicans or all Democrats.
yeah.
But it was the Colorado ballot that just had numbers on
Oh, it was Colorado. Okay.
And
okay.
you had to vote for a number, and some of the numbers were duplicate. There were some numbers that were missing.
They made a mess of it out there.
Yeah,
They did.
They did.
Yeah, I have family out in Colorado, and my sister-in-law said, I'm thinking about not being a Republican anymore because of what they did. Mm-hmm. And I guess they elected delegates, and then the delegates were pledged to vote for certain people, and this was months and months ago. Well, those people are no longer even running. So now, what do the delegates do now?
Then you get into the point he brought up earlier that, well, they may not be running, but they're still in the running because they're only suspended.
Yeah.
And they're in a jockeying position,
Right,
kind
yeah.
of thing.
Right.
And
Wow.
could we talk about something that's a little sane? You're going to run for the governor's council.
But for a political junkie, this is the. But sure, I'll talk
It's a
about
guaranteed headache. That's what it is.
Gotta
How do
give
you
you
get
credit.
your head around this?
Yeah, gotta give you credit for
Yeah.
jumping in. Yeah.
Okay.
What is the governor's council?
All right.
Explain it, please.
The governor's council it's actually a very, very old board. It was set up by the King of England, I think, in the late 1600s. To advise the governor on various aspects. And over the years, they've had more or less power. At this point, the governor's council's primary job is to do judicial nominations. And what happens with judges in Massachusetts is there's a judicial nominating board that the governor appoints that comes up and screens the resumes of people that are interested in the judicial opening and comes up with 3 or 4 names. The State Bar and the Boston Bar Association have kind of inserted themselves in the process after that, and they take that list and they give a rating of each of the candidates. It then goes to the governor, to Governor Baker, to go through and choose which candidate he wants to move forward. So once Governor Baker has nominated a judge, it goes to the Governor's Council. And the Governor's Council does a lot of the work that the Senate Judiciary Committee does in Washington. They'll interview the candidate, they'll hold hearings, do the screening of them to make sure that this is somebody that we want on the bench. In Massachusetts, judges serve until they're 70, so this could be somebody that will be serving on the bench for 20 or 30 years. At the end of these hearings, the Governor's Council either approves or disapproves of the candidate.
When they hold the meetings, they only hold the meetings once a week.
Right, it's Wednesday afternoons.
And the public can sit in on the meetings.
Yes.
Now, from what I read, it seems as though many times, not too many of these Governor's Council members even show up. So lots of times it may be only 2 or 3 members voting.
I'm not familiar with that problem. When I went down, I was thinking of running in 2010, and went down to do the research on it. And at that point, our Governor's Councilor was Mary Ellen Manning from Peabody, I think. And I went down and started reading some of the work she had done, thinking, okay, this is who I'm going to run against, and saw that she always showed up. She always had very good, well-reasoned questions and reasons for her votes. And it was like, I'm supporting this person. I'm not going to run against her. And then she ran for state senate instead of Governor's Council, I think in 2012 or something. So we've got another person in there now.
Well, I was interested to find out that they recently got a raise.
Yes, they did. It was like...
And they're now $36,000 a year.
Yes, about a $10,000 raise, if I remember.
Yeah, that Governor Baker signed off on.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, that's a pretty good chunk of change.
Well, if they have to show up every Wednesday afternoon for 52 weeks, that ain't too bad. Just driving into Boston every week, that's a...
I don't know. I think that's a pretty good piece of change to go in for once a week.
And if somebody doesn't show up, if they have only a few of them showing up, I'd have a real problem with it.
Yeah. And what are there, 9 members or 11?
There are eight members plus the Lieutenant Governor.
Okay.
It's chaired by the Lieutenant Governor, and then there's...
When she appears. Apparently, during the Patrick administration, the Lieutenant Governor didn't show up very often, so then it went to a member of the Governor's Council to be the chair.
But Lieutenant Governor Healy has done a very good job, from what I've heard, of showing up and running the Governor's Council. Now,
does the Governor's Council also get involved with parole boards?
Yes, the primary
kind of thing?
The primary job is the judicial nominations, but they
Right.
also do parole decisions, commutations of sentences. They sign the warrant for all of the state bills. It's a formality, but it's still, they're the ones that put their name on the fact that authorizing the state to pay their bills each week.
Okay.
So there are other duties as well. We also do justices of the peace, and notaries are all authorized through the Governor's Council.
Well, there's an interesting aside on this. I was reading a book on psychology and statistics. And in Israel, there is a council that votes on whether somebody's going to get paroled from jail or not. And it turns out if the vote comes up before lunch, hasn't got a snowball's chance in the Virgo. But if it comes up after lunch, they're in a better mood. So these are going to meet on Wednesday afternoons, you say. Huh?
Yes.
Well fed, you're in a good mood. Remember that if you get it.
Yeah,
now,
but we'd have just driven in through Boston traffic to get there.
that may have another effect on it, yeah. But the other question I get down to is, you're going to be running against a Democrat.
Yes.
So there's no allocation of 3 seats Republican, 3 Democrat, or any.
No, 2 years ago, it was 8 Democrats on there. We picked up a Republican from Worcester County, I think in 2014, and I hope to be the second Republican on there, and starting in 2017.
We get a power block, yeah.
Yeah.
just like the legislature.
Well, that'll get us closer to the ratio that we have with the legislature. Yes.
Well, I have a problem with the way that judges are appointed in Massachusetts, because it seems because we have such an overwhelming number of Democrats running everything, and the judges that are appointed are very liberal judges. And I mean, that's how we got same-sex marriage. It was one judge that decided we're going to have it in Massachusetts. There's something wrong with this picture.
Oh, the problem that's wrong with this picture is that it's a one-party state, and like it or not, that's the way the game is played here, and you can't expect anything different.
Well, I wonder if the judges were elected, would it change?
No.
You don't think so?
Elections have consequences.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
You know, who you vote for governor's council makes a difference. Who you vote for state senator and for governor makes a difference.
Yeah.
Because that's how we currently determine who we have for judges.
Right.
So I've seen the sign on the wall that we're running out of time for this thing. Before we go any further, why should we vote for you for the governor's council? What's your background that makes you a good candidate?
Well, I deal a lot with the law without being a lawyer. So I will never, because I'm not a lawyer, I'll never appear before any of the judges I appoint, so I've got no conflict. But I have taken all of the intellectual property law classes that they offered a couple of years ago at Franklin Pierce Law Center, which is now UNH Law. I deal with the law at the federal level on patent law. I like to say I do everything with patents that you can do without being an attorney. So I argue for the patent office, and I serve as an expert witness in federal patent trials. I've managed litigations for various companies. So I deal a lot with lawyers, and I know, how judicial precedent works, how that ties into the law. So I understand how it all works without being someone that's going to practice in front of that.
Oh, that's good. So you don't have that stigma of being a lawyer.
That's very true.
That's good. That's good. Well, we are almost out of time, Rich, but we want to thank you for coming and for explaining not only the Governor's Council, but wading through all this caucus material.
Can I step in for one moment
Sure.
and just
Yep.
tell everybody that if you're a Republican, the caucus will be held at the Wakefield Elks on Bay State Road in Wakefield. That's right off of Route 128. It's next to Liberty Chevrolet. And every Republican is invited, and I'd encourage you to go. Watch the process. It starts at 10 o'clock in the morning. It should only last an hour or two. I suggest you show up at 9:30 because there's probably going to be a fair crowd there. But it's an interesting process, and I invite all Republicans to show up. For the Democrats, I'm sorry to say your caucus was 2 weeks ago in
You missed it.
beginning of April.
Yeah.
Okay, listen to that, all you Republicans out there, and go to the caucus. Thanks again for coming, Rich.
Thank you for having me.